Hey guys, what's up? Public here, back with another video, and today we have our first look at the Voidweaver hero talents for Shadow Priest in the War Within. This is the first out of two hero talents that we have for Shadow Priest in War Within. The other one is Archon. Archon is not quite released yet, but we do have Voidweaver, which is what we're going to talk about in this video. So basically what we're going to do is just kind of go over what the tree looks like, what the nodes do. I'm going to give some thoughts and opinions on it, but I'm going to try to keep it kind of light. And then over the next couple days or weeks, you'll see some more kind of in-depth talking about animations or other interactions that it has with our kit. Now I'm going to try something a little bit different for this video. I have done it once in the past. You're not going to see me talking during this video for the most of it. I'm going to put actual footage of people playing Voidweaver on the kind of early alpha that was gone out. Big shout out to Max and Fronk that agreed to let me use the footage for this. So you'll see that on one side of the screen, and the other side you'll see me go over the talents. So let's dive in. Okay, so this is Voidweaver. This is shared between Shadow Priest and Discipline Priest. So kind of keep that in mind. And just so you're aware, just getting caught up on alpha, there were no actual base spec changes coming in. So the spec baseline is going to play the same. And then we have our choice of hero talents. So let's dive into Voidweaver. So first off, we have Entropic Rift, which is Void Torrent tears open an Entropic Rift that follows the enemy for 10 seconds. And then enemies caught in its path suffer spell damage every 1 second while it's within its reach. So right off the bat, it's kind of like a, really emphasizing Void Torrent gameplay, which is great. I'm definitely going to kind of go into Malediction and other nodes that work with Void Torrent. And you're summoning this AoE thing on the ground, and this thing hits hard. It's hitting for like 20% more, give or take, than a Mind Blast every second to everyone that's in its kind of radius. You're probably seeing the footage on the other side of the screen. It doesn't start off very big. It's kind of quite a small radius to start with. And I think it's like 5 yards, give or take. But we'll kind of see what that looks like as we go throughout the tree. I'm going to go down the middle first, just to get the kind of big nodes out of the way. And the side nodes will kind of add up to that. So next up, we have Void Blast. So Entropic Rift upgrades Mind Blast into Void Blast while it is active. Void Blast generates 8 Insanity up from the 6 that Mind Blast normally generates, and then hits for almost just about 3 times harder than Mind Blast does. It does still have the same cast time and the same cooldown, but it hits way harder. And feeding off of that, also Void Blast has a really cool new animation as well, which you're probably seeing as well. It's got like a twin, like casty thing of like bolts. It's pretty sweet. And Darkening Horizon makes Void Blast increase the duration of Rift by 1 second up to a maximum of 5 seconds. So this is the first of 2 kind of mechanics that are enhancing the Rift itself. So basically, baseline, it lasts 10 seconds. And if you cast 5 Void Blasts, or Mind Blasts, while it's active, you can extend it for a total of 15 seconds on Entropic Rift. So for the most part, based on the cooldown, you're not always going to get 5 seconds here. If you can bank up charges, maybe get some resets if you're using Void Eruption, or procs of Shadowy Insight, that's where you can kind of high roll this up to 5 seconds. But on average, most people are going to get probably 3, maybe 4, depending on how much haste you have. Coming down here, we have Void Infusion, which just says Void Blast now generates 100% additional Insanity. So it goes from 8 to 16. So big jump up. You're getting 10 extra Insanity compared to a base Mind Blast. So this thing is juiced. And then the final node in the tree is Collapsing Void. Each time you cast Devouring Plague, note that it's casts of Devouring Plague, the Rift is expanded by 1 yard. And then after the Rift ends, it collapses, rapidly dealing shadow damage up to 8 times to a random enemy, based on how many times it has expanded. So this is the kind of second portion of the Rift here, where there's another kind of extension mechanic, this time on Devouring Plague, which makes that radius bigger. So like I said, you start off with about 5 yards, give or take, and then you can extend that out. And more or less 8 Devouring Plague casts, which is the cap for the damage at the end, is probably reasonable to assume that's like the high end of how many Devouring Plagues you can get out in that 10 to 15 second window. This kind of plays off of each other, so you're definitely incentivized to make sure you're getting out as much as Mind Blast and Devouring Plague casts as possible. So right off the bat, we have a lot of synergies. If I scroll down to our spec tree, a lot of synergies here with talents like Void Touch, which lets you bank up Insanity right before you press Void Torrent, which is going to be really important, as well as stuff like Mind's Eye to reduce the Insanity cost of Devouring Plague. So you're already seeing some synergies with our talent tree just based off this initial bit with Voidweaver. Another thing I want to mention before we move on to the sides here is Entropic Rift, while it is created from Void Torrent, the actual Entropic Rift itself is not spawned until the cast of Void Torrent ends, which is super important, which means you're not actually losing anything while you're waiting for the Void Torrent damage to finish. So that way you can, feel free to generate the full insanity, and then as it ends, then you're in that cycle when you're going to push Devouring Plagues and Mind Blasts out. So definitely a great interaction there. Okay, let's move on to the left side of the tree. So this is one of the first choice nodes we have. And keep in mind, if you didn't already know from previous hero talent iterations, at max level, you're going to get access to all of this. So once you hit level 80, you're going to get every single one of these points. The difference is of the choice nodes. So the only thing you're going to have to do at max level is choose which of these choice nodes you want. So keep that in mind. Anything here that isn't a choice node is just going to be baseline once you hit level 80. So our first choice node here is No Escape or Dark Energy. No Escape simply says Entropic Rift now slows enemies by up to 80% and increases the closer they are to its center. So definitely kind of playing on the Rift effect that you're seeing here, since it is a ground effect. One thing I would really love to see here is instead of just simply slowing enemies, I think as a Rift, I kind of want it to act almost like a black hole. It'd be really sweet if they could actually change this and add to it maybe where it also pulls enemies slowly into the center, which would be really great for grouping them and kind of give us that CC that we've been asking for. The other effect, which is awesome, and I think probably going to be a lock-in choice for a lot of people, is Dark Energy, which Void Torrent can now be used while moving, period. This is all the time. Every cast of Void Torrent can be used while moving. And then while Entropic Void is active, you move 20% faster. So the movement speed itself is really, really awesome. It's going to feel great. It is only while that 10 to 15 second window. But if you're taking Malediction and you're getting max uptime, so let's say it always lasts 15 seconds, you're getting roughly 50% uptime on this, which is pretty massive. So I think Dark Energy is going to be kind of a knock in the park for a lot of people. This one's super exciting. Just hoping that we can get a bit more on No Escape, because I don't know, with it being a choice node against Dark Energy, how many people will prefer it. So we're going to lock in Dark Energy for sure. Okay, next choice node. This one is a throughput choice. So this is one of the ones that you would be changing at max level depending on what damage pattern you want. The first one is Devour Matter. So this brings Shadow Word Death into the hero talent tree for the first time. And it says Shadow Word Death consumes absorb shields from your target, dealing up to 300% extra damage to them, and granting you 5 insanity if a shield was present. So this is really important. It's the up to 300%. So that kind of is like a static number based on if the target actually had any absorbs active or not. So where you might see this from like the current raids here is like the dungeon boss like Iridicron or Fyrak or Tindral. Quite a lot of shields to the environment, where Shadow Word Death would then deal extra damage and then also give you insanity, just kind of doubling down on kind of like the effectiveness of insanity in this build. So not something that's going to be used quite that often in PvE, and that's mostly because it is a choice node with Void Empowerment. So Void Empowerment summons, and whenever you summon your Rift, you immediately get a charge of Mind Devourer. And just in case you forgot, so Mind Devourer is simply, Mind Blast is a chance to make your next Devouring Plague cost no insanity and deal 20% additional damage. Every time that you press Void Torrent, when that ends, you're going to get a free Mind Devourer proc. So with that, you're guaranteed, especially for running Void Touched, you can bank up 150 insanity, which is 3 Devouring Plague costs, and then you also get a Mind Devourer. So that means starting off really easily with, just about any build, as soon as you get this, you can get 4 Devouring Plagues out back to back very quickly as soon as you take Void Empowerment. And of course, you can still get more procs of Mind Devourer to continue further that. So yeah, with this choice node, I think this is one of the ones that I think we could see some changes maybe. I don't know how much Devour Matter is going to be used. Kind of very niche situations if the target has absorbs. Maybe a good option for certain PvP comps. Otherwise, I think Void Empowerment is going to be the go-to here. And lastly, we have Voidheart, which simply says, while Entropic Rift is active, your shadow damage is increased by 10%. Now, we don't know if this is going to stay, but currently in the spell data, this is just flat shadow damage. This is not a set amount of spells. So if you're doing anything from your character that does shadow damage, this would presumably work with that. Unsure if this works with pet spells like, Void Spike from Thing from Beyond, or the Idol of Cthulhu, Mind Flays, or Mind Seers. That is something we'll still need to test. Presumably, though, this would not work with something like the Shadow Fiend or Mindbender melee spells, which is important because it does mean, this isn't just straight up 10% damage. It's going to be 9 point something. But on the flip side, like I said, currently this is just shadow damage, which means if there are any shadow effects in the game that are not straight up pre-spells, like shadow trinkets or other kind of cantrip effect items that deal shadow damage, they would get buffed by this in its current state. Unsure if that'll go live, but that's how it works today. Okay, let's go over to the right side. We have Inner Quietus. I'm certainly not saying that right, but this is simply saying Vampiric Touch and Shadow Red Pain deal 20% additional damage. And again, this is the first time we've seen this get mentioned on the tree, so unclear. This doesn't really seem to fit with the theme of what they're going for here. This could just be another tuning knob they have for the spec, which has been common in other hero talent sets that we've seen, but currently nothing in this interacts with our dots, so it's just kind of a static node for now. Okay, and then we have our other choice node that you're going to take for throughput. So if you're keeping track, you have two choice nodes on this tree that are throughput oriented: the Void Empowerment or Devour Matter, or this one, which is Depth of Shadows or Voidwraith. So Depth of Shadows says Shadow or Death has a high chance to summon a Shadow Fiend for 5 seconds, and the chances increase against lower health targets. So this one, a couple caveats here. Again, this is the second time we've seen Shadow or Death mentioned, so they're definitely trying to bake in some synergies here. And what we do know is, the high chance is not quite known yet. So that could be, 20%, 30%, who knows what that actually is. But it is kind of incentivizing that. It'll work with things like Death Speaker. What we're not sure is if this will also summon a Mindbender. The wording makes it seem like it will, kind of get upgraded with that. And it's also really important that it says it's going to summon a Shadow Fiend here. So it's not actually going to extend the pet if you currently have it out, is our expectation. Which is really important because it might give us more burst. And then, again, the chances increase against lower health targets. Looking at the spell data, this looks like it's going to be a lower than 20% threshold here, but we'll see what that ends up being once we get into alpha and can test this out. One note here from testing, just looking at it and reading it, it does say it has a 1 second cooldown, which we know might be a problem at high haste. If you have really high haste, the GCD is actually lower than 1 second. If you ever hit in that situation with Death and Madness where Shadow or Death's cooldown gets reset and you press Shadow or Death back to back, that actually would not count here because it would be on cooldown still. So 1 point of feedback for them there. But you can imagine this has pretty cool implications for Inescapable Torment and Idol of Yashiraj, summoning more Shadow Fiends, giving us more Insanity Generation to kind of help fuel our kind of the whole cycle of Entropic Rift. And then the other choice is Voidwraith. So Voidwraith transforms your Shadow Fiend, or presumably Mindbender as well if you have that talented, into a Voidwraith that casts Void Flay, which is a single target kind of Mind Flay-esque ability that deals up to 50% additional damage compared to like a normal melee swing that you would get from these guys. And then it actually has a modifier here. When the target currently, it looks like it's above 50% health, it will do even more damage. So it's kind of like a reverse execute single target pet here. From people that were testing on PTR, I did not get access in the kind of pre-alpha that they had. They actually said that this was static at a 2-minute cooldown always, regardless of Shadow Fiend, regardless of Mindbender talents. So that does kind of mean the Mindbender talent itself would be kind of wasted if you're going down to Inescapable Torment. Unsure if that's a bug, but we'll see when that goes live. This choice is more or less somewhat similar to like AoE versus single target. I could definitely see Voidwraith scaling better early on in the expansion, and then later on that Insanity Generation here or just raw damage is nice as well from Depth of Shadows. So, but yeah, definitely an interesting interaction, and I gotta say, Voidwraith looks awesome. Okay, and then the last one on the tree here is another kind of utility choice node between Void Leech and Embrace the Shadow. So Void Leech plays upon the kind of shadow tropes of old of trolling a little bit. We have spells like Void Shift and Leap of Faith that plenty of people use to troll people, and this is a new one in our kit, which says every 2 seconds you siphon an amount of health equal to 3% of your own health from a nearby ally if they are higher health than you. So yes, we can passively leech off of our party members to gain health, which is, I'm sure lots of people will love kind of role-playing as a vampire here in your raid groups. And the other side is Embrace the Shadow, which is saying you absorb 3% of all magic damage taken, and absorbing shadow damage heals you for 100% of the amount absorbed. So kind of an interesting one. This one is a DR, effectively. So that means any magic damage taken, you're now taking 3% reduced magic damage. So that in and of itself can be really powerful. A lot of the damage that we're taking is going to end up being magic. And on top of that, if you're ever taking shadow damage, or Shadow Flame damage, presumably. Kind of depends on what the encounter looks like. That will also heal you, so you kind of give extra value here anytime the target's dealing magic damage to you and it's Shadow. Not only will you reduce it by 3%, you'll also then get healed for that amount as well. So definitely a good kind of DR interaction here. I think Embrace of Shadow will probably get played a bit more. Just kind of depends on the encounter type. But Void Leech, you know, we already quite have a lot of passive healing in our kit with Vampiric Touch and Devouring Plague. So we'll see how that works out. But this is the current iteration of the tree. Okay, so this is the kind of first look at the Voidweaver tree. Overall, I'm super happy with this. I think it's a great kind of first pass, especially given the fact that I think we'll probably see some iteration here. I'm super happy with it. Do I think it's perfect? No. I think, you know, there are a couple of things here I'd love to see changed, but I think the base here looks great. I love that it's enhancing Void Torrent and Mind Blast, and honestly, the animations look great from what we've seen from previews. So I'm super excited to actually play this and get my hands on it. I've started already writing up some feedback and just general notes after going through it on stream with people. I'm going to kind of save this for a future video as far as like pros and cons go, just because I think there will probably be some changes naturally that will come within just probably the first couple days of it being released. And I want to make sure that I test it before giving all of my full feedback and thoughts. So this is just a preview. Looking forward to doing kind of a full video in a couple days after I get a couple, you know, get some time under my belt with the spec, and then we'll give kind of more feedback and then post on the forums, of course, with that as well. So with that, that is it for this video. Let me know in the comments below what you're looking to see in terms of the War Within alpha content. I'm going to try to do as much as I can, especially if I can stream it. I'll do what I can. So let me know what you're interested in particular, and I'll try to prioritize based on what I see down below. Big thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.